bike was already soaked through, water dripping from its red handlebars onto my freshly cut grass. The kid was already screaming like someone had stolen his birthday presents. And Rhonda Peller was already in my face, waving a soggy HOA handbook like she was Moses coming down from Mount Sinai with the sacred tablets. She jabbed her manicured finger at her son's Spider-Man bike, which had apparently committed the unforgivable sin of encountering my perfectly legal automatic sprinkler system. Her voice reached that special pitch that only suburban mothers defending their precious offspring can achieve. She declared with absolute certainty that I would be invoiced for water damage and emotional trauma. Then she actually said, and I swear I am not making this up, that this was an heirloom from Target. That was the precise moment I knew my peaceful Tuesday morning was about to spiral into something absurd. All over a $49 bicycle and a standard sprinkler zone doing exactly what it was programmed to do. My name is Jasper Cordell. I am 38 years old, divorced, an introvert by nature, and work as an engineer for a tech company that lets me work from home. I moved to Pine Brook Hill specifically to escape noise, drama, and chaotic neighbors. What I got instead was the HOA equivalent of a totalitarian regime, complete with mandatory lawn height measurements and a color-approved mailbox list that would make a paint store weep. Living next door to me was Rhonda Peller, who I can only describe as the final boss of all Karens. She carried herself with the energy of a regional manager who had just discovered a cashier gave someone an unauthorized discount. She ran our HOA like it was a Fortune 500 company, and she was the CEO of telling everyone else how to live their lives. Her son, Braxton, age 7, seemed to have only two operational modes. He was either screaming at a volume that violated several noise ordinances or he was plotting his next act of suburban terrorism. Rhonda had taken an instant dislike to me from the day I moved in. She informed me that my mulch color palette lacked harmony with the neighborhood aesthetic. I made the mistake of telling her I was not trying to feng shui my flower bed. Our relationship never recovered from that moment. She started leaving passive-aggressive notes about my garbage can placement and the angle at which I parked my car in my own driveway. The real trouble started when Braxton decided my lawn was his personal stunt course. Every afternoon he would rocket down their sloped driveway on his bike, veer hard left into my yard, and abandon it right in the middle of my carefully maintained Bermuda grass. The first time it happened, I figured kids will be kids. The 10th time, I was less understanding. I tried the polite approach first. I knocked on their door and explained that I was worried about the bike getting damaged or stolen if left on my property. Rhonda told me I should be honored that Braxton felt comfortable enough to trust me with his belongings. The next day, I put up a small sign that said, "Private property, no parking." Braxton used it for target practice with his super soaker. Finally, I decided to install an automatic sprinkler system. It was not specifically to deal with the bike situation, though I will admit the thought crossed my mind. My grass genuinely needed better irrigation, and the timer would ensure efficient water usage. I set it to run every morning at 6:03 a.m., when normal people were either asleep or getting ready for work. One fateful Tuesday morning, the system clicked on right on schedule. The sprinklers rose from the ground like tiny geysers, spraying perfect arcs of water across my lawn. Unfortunately for Braxton, he had once again abandoned his Spider-Man bike directly in the path of Zone 2. For 30 minutes, that bike received the kind of thorough soaking usually reserved for car washes. At 6:33 a.m., I heard the kind of shriek that makes dogs howl and birds flee. Through my kitchen window, I watched Braxton discover his waterlogged ride. 10 seconds later, Rhonda burst out of her house in a silk bathrobe that probably cost more than my monthly water bill. She was clutching a coffee mug that proclaimed her the #1 boy mom, though at that moment she looked more like the #1 candidate for a blood pressure medication commercial. She marched across the property line like she was storming Normandy. I opened my door before she could assault my doorbell. She demanded that I immediately replace the damaged bike. When I pointed out that the bike was not damaged, just wet, she launched into a lecture about water damage, rust, and the psychological trauma her son had suffered. She actually pulled out her phone and showed me screenshots of bikes on Amazon, insisting I order a replacement right that second. When I politely declined and suggested that perhaps Braxton should not leave his bike on other people's property, she narrowed her eyes and uttered the words every homeowner in an HOA neighborhood fears. She said I would be hearing from the board about this. Then she cited me for negligent hydration under HOA Rule 9.2 subsection B, which I was pretty sure she made up on the spot. 3 days later, I received a certified letter that must have cost her $15 to send. It was an official HOA violation notice for intentional property damage. Attached was a grainy security camera photo of Braxton's wet bike that looked like it had been taken with a potato. The letter demanded $31,247 in restitution, itemized to include the bike replacement, emotional support fees, and something called aquatic trauma mitigation. The letter claimed I had weaponized water delivery systems with intent to intimidate a minor. It sounded like something from a bad legal thriller. I was commanded to appear at a disciplinary hearing to be held in 3 days at Rhonda's house, specifically in her backyard gazebo. She had turned her patio into a makeshift courtroom. That was when I decided to call my cousin Terrence. He is a litigation attorney who specializes in HOA overreach cases and lives for this exact type of situation. He once got an entire HOA board removed for trying to ban American flags. When I explained the situation, I could practically hear him salivating through the phone. We showed up to the kangaroo court armed with a binder thick enough to use as a weapon. Inside were time-stamped photos showing Braxton's bike on my lawn on 43 separate occasions. We had security footage of him literally throwing it onto my grass. We had screenshots of the actual HOA bylaws highlighting that there was no such thing as Rule 9.2 subsection B. Most importantly, we had a cease and desist letter regarding harassment and frivolous claims. The gazebo tribunal was everything I expected and more. Rhonda had actually printed name plates for everyone and arranged the seating like a real courtroom. She had recruited 2 other board members who looked like they would rather be anywhere else. One was nervously eating cookies from a tin, and the other kept checking his watch. Terrence let Rhonda present her case first. She had prepared a PowerPoint presentation complete with transition effects and dramatic music. She showed photos of the bike from multiple angles, testimonials from Braxton about his emotional distress written in crayon, and a cost breakdown that somehow included future therapy sessions. When it was our turn, Terrence calmly presented our evidence. Then he dropped the bomb. Through his research, he had discovered that Rhonda had been violating multiple HOA ordinances herself. Braxton's bike lacked the required reflective markings mandated in Section 14.7 for any wheeled toy used in common areas. She had installed an illegal decorative koi pond in her backyard without proper permits or HOA approval. But the real showstopper was when Terrence produced documents showing that Rhonda had been altering HOA financial records. She had authorized payments to herself for board meeting refreshments, used HOA funds to purchase a professional espresso machine for morale purposes, and had even tried to expense her monthly car wash as neighborhood beautification. The 2 other board members suddenly became very interested in the proceedings. The cookie-eating one actually stopped mid-chew. Terrence had also brought video footage from the last HOA meeting where Rhonda could be heard saying that she considered the HOA funds to be at her discretion for anything that improved her ability to lead. The transformation in the gazebo was instant. The other board members exchanged meaningful looks. One of them asked to see the financial documents more closely. Within minutes, they had called an emergency executive session, which meant Rhonda had to leave her own gazebo while they deliberated. She stood in her backyard, arms crossed, shooting laser beams at me with her eyes while we waited. Braxton had long since gotten bored and was now jumping on their trampoline. 20 minutes later, the board members emerged with grim faces. They announced that effective immediately, Rhonda was suspended from her position as HOA president, pending a full investigation into financial irregularities. Her HOA email account would be deactivated within the hour. All her pending violation notices were void. They also noted that she would need to remove her illegal koi pond within 30 days or face her own fines. The best part was watching her try to respond. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again like a fish gasping for air. Her face went through several shades of red before settling on a purple that matched her throw pillows. She actually pulled out her phone to send an angry email to the board, only to discover that her HOA account had already been shut down mid-composition. 2 days later, I received a formal apology letter from the interim HOA president along with a $50 gift card to Lowe's for what they called irrigation excellence. They also included a note saying that the board appreciated my patience during this difficult transition period. Rhonda tried to confront me the following week during the neighborhood yoga class in the park. She stormed over to my mat just as we were getting into warrior pose. Before she could say anything, the instructor, who had clearly heard about the incident, calmly walked over with her essential oil spray bottle and misted Rhonda with lavender while asking her to please respect the sacred space of healing and leave if she could not maintain her inner peace. The investigation into Rhonda's financial creativity revealed she had misappropriated over $4,000 in HOA funds. She was permanently removed from the board and banned from holding any HOA position for 10 years. She was also required to pay back every penny with interest, which came to $4,832. When she received that letter delivered by a process server during her book club meeting, she let out a shriek that set off 3 car alarms.